Hi, folks. Yes, this is Tech News Today. I'm here today, Denise, Howell, along with Iyaz, Akhtar, Tom, Merritt, and Sarah Lane. We're going to talk about Flame. It's the cleverest malware. Intel wants to change television. Goodness knows it needs changing. iOS is really for real. And lots more next on Tech News Today.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at cachefly.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, June 8th, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, go to Squarespace.com, use offer code TNT6, and they now offer free domain registration with annual plan subscriptions. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
I'm Jason Howell.
And we've got another Howell. Denise Howell from This Week in Law joins us today.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going very well.
And you're sitting in Sarah's chair.
I am.
And Sarah's
Sarah
on Skype,
so
which you're usually on Skype.
It's all very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's great to be here.
Well, it's good to have you. And thanks for having me on This Week in Law. That was fun.
It was really fun.
Yeah, it was a good time.
You were great.
Oh, thank you. I hope I held my own with the smart people.
You did.
The lawyer people. Now I'm surrounded by them. Yeah. Iyaz is back today, too.
I am back after my little fun jaunt at E3.
How was it?
It was lots of fun. I ran into people I wouldn't expect to meet there, and I got to play games for once, which was just I haven't done that in a long time.
Legitimately. Like, not like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. Like, no, that's what I came here for.
That's what I was doing.
Playing games.
Yeah, it was like I got to play with the Wii U, and I'm like, this is actually not so bad, but I still think Microsoft's going to kill him.
Well, we got some more details on Facebook's App Center. We got some iOS facts to talk about. And we'll explain why Flame is so amazingly sophisticated. But let's start off with the top 10 stories of the day in the news feeds. Enough with the rumors. Here's a fact. Mac Stories spotted banners being put up in the Moscone Convention Center that say iOS 6. Moscone's where the WWDC will take place. That's the Apple Developer Conference starting Monday. Granted, it could mean anything. But no, it couldn't, actually. Monday we get iOS 6. More facts coming later in the show.
Facebook wants to help you find third-party mobile and web apps as long as they integrate with Facebook, that is. The new Facebook App Center is launched with about 600 apps, at least to start. Although Facebook only points to apps rather than actually selling them directly, it does give personalized recommendations and also lets you know which apps are popular with your friends. Users can toggle between web or mobile apps.
Epic Games showed off its Unreal Engine 4, and it can handle lighting at higher speeds than previous versions. So instead of a developer having to tweak the lighting for weeks, Unreal Engine 4 will take care of that. If you're thinking, great, who cares about light? You should care, because lighting is what makes a scene look real, okay? The engine does more of the work, so programmers can work on other things. So the engine's good.
More light. Symantec reports that one of their honeypot servers that was intentionally allowed to be inflected or infected, either one, with the Flame malware, experienced an interesting event. Flame removed itself. The command located every Flame file sitting on the PC, removed it, and then overwrote memory locations with gibberish to thwart forensic examination. Symantec says the cleanup routine seems to have been written in early May.
The United Nations is weighing the benefits of a new internet tax on big web providers like Google, Facebook, Apple, and Netflix. The European proposal was debated back in December at a UN agency called the International Telecommunications Union, and according to leaked documents, would amend an existing treaty by imposing heavy costs on big websites and their network providers to serve non-U.S. users.
Google Street View should continue to be available in Switzerland. A Swiss court said Google does not have to blur all faces and number plates before publishing images to Street View. However, around sensitive facilities like schools and prisons, plates and faces must be blurred to be put online. A lower court had previously ruled that Google would be required to blur each and every face and plate, to which Google said it would remove the Street View feature from the country if the ruling was not overturned.
Oh, look, there's a skirmish on the internet playground. First, Jeffrey Katz, CEO of price comparison site NextTag, published an op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal criticizing Google for favoring its own products and services and called Google a brand killer because it controls which sites get exposure. Then, Google Senior VP of Engineering, Amit Sengal, wrote a response tearing apart Kat's piece, saying that Google search results are built to help users find relevant results and are not built to favor any site.
In the game of search, you win or you go to the FTC.
Like, just change your location in your address bar.
They're a brand killer, like Jamie Lannister. We can put a man on the moon, but we can't get rid of the blind spot in our car's side mirrors. Wait, reverse that, folks. We haven't been able to put a man on the moon for around 30 years, but our Andrew Hicks from Drexel University has cracked the blind spot issue. He created a mirror that controls the light bouncing off a slightly curved mirror, resulting in a field of view of around 45 degrees rather than the standard 15 to 17. The patent was just awarded, but in the United States, curved mirrors are not allowed on the driver's side. Yet.
Why?
Because
it's a good idea.
They want the objects not to look smaller or larger than
mirror lobby.
Yeah. Mirror lobby. It might be.
Blind spot it is for now anyway. Apple must pay a $2.25 million settlement over marketing new iPads as 4G enabled in Australia. The courts there called it false advertising because although the new iPad does support 4G data networks in the US and Canada, those frequencies are not offered by any cell carriers in Australia and other countries. See you in bankruptcy court, Apple. Burn.
Get ready for Apple to allow clones. I know, but one of these kind of unthinkable things happened yesterday. Microsoft revealed that its Azure cloud computing service is extending support to Linux. And Ubuntu fans should sit down. If they haven't heard this already, Ubuntu founder Mark Shuttleworth announced that Canonical is working with Microsoft to support Ubuntu Linux on the Azure platform. Also, cats and dogs are sleeping together.
I don't know about the last part.
Well,
actually, I don't know
middle
about
part's
any of
real.
that. Wait,
The
that's
Microsoft Linux
crazy.
thing is real.
All right. Let's get into some meatier discussion stories. Facebook's App Center, we mentioned earlier, is trying to make things easier for third-party apps. But, Sarah, these aren't apps that you download from Facebook. It's kind of weird.
No, in fact, it's interesting because Facebook, we sort of knew that this was coming, but this was something that was announced yesterday evening. And sure enough, the Facebook App Center is alive and well. They feature a bunch of apps that you've probably already downloaded or at least heard of. Facebook is pretty good at saying, okay, well, these are a lot of apps that would be shared via Facebook. They certainly allow Facebook logins, that sort of thing. So it keeps the Facebook ecosystem alive for them to be pushing these apps out to you. Of course, Instagram is an unusual case because Facebook is in the process of owning Instagram, but Pinterest or Angry Birds or those kinds of apps. What's interesting to me about this whole thing, though, is that this time last year, Facebook was all about HTML5. You know, they were trying to recruit developers to make apps on the HTML5 platform. The whole idea with Facebook itself was that it was going to be a really solid HTML5 program, so that, well, not program, but infrastructure. Yeah. So that it didn't really matter how you were accessing Facebook. It was going to be pretty much the same experience across a multitude of tablets and smartphones or via the web. And they've really done a 180 with this. And I think it's because, at least in part, and this was a great article on TechCrunch that broke some of these numbers down that I read, is that Facebook really depends on some of these app stores. It's not just iOS, but when you look at iOS, Facebook drove people to Apple's App Store 83 million times last month. So that's people clicking on app links that people are sharing because they've decided to post to their Facebook wall and that sort of thing. They sent people back to iOS apps that had already been downloaded by the folks 134 million times. So that would be something like Tom sharing an Instagram link or something, and I'm clicking on it even though I already have Instagram downloaded. So they realized that people are using Facebook regularly who are also using these apps, and why not marry the two going forward? Facebook is also baked into 7 out of the top 10 grossing iOS apps, 6 out of the top 10 Android apps. So although I don't think that Facebook has abandoned HTML5, and I think in a perfect world they would prefer that to proprietary app stores, it seems like in the short term it makes more sense to attach themselves to where people are flocking.
Do you think this is Facebook feeling the pressure to monetize mobile? They realize, oh, we're actually in all these apps. We need to promote that usage.
Well, the thing is it's not as if they're getting any rev share from that 30% cut that Apple or Android is taking from whatever developers are charging for these stores. Apple does give a straight up 5% to referrers of eventual iTunes purchases. So if you see something in my feed and you click over and you end up buying the app, Facebook is going to get a really small cut of that, but 5% is pretty paltry. I don't think that Facebook would have built this thinking that they were going to get rich out of a 5% referral fee. But I think they've also seen the rush for developers to be building HTML5 apps, maybe not as frenetic as they thought it would be around this time last year.
You guys think this is building up the rumor that Facebook's building their own phone? I mean, they had an app like Marketplace where you could find applications, you can get recommendations, but it was kind of all over the place. And to make this somewhat curated system, this thing is like 600 applications on there, it's got recommendations, has a send to mobile button. It just seems like something like, it almost feels like Google Play or the Android market, what it used to be called, where you could just easily send it to your device. Because unless they're working with Apple, then they can send their app directly to an iOS device or to an Android device or their own device. It seems like it's a strange choice to go send to mobile for something like this.
I think that this points away from Facebook creating a phone platform, because they're saying apps aren't on our platform. Apps are out there everywhere else, and we're going to highlight them. We're throwing in the towel, so to speak. Maybe they're not throwing in the towel, but this is certainly not evidence of a Facebook phone. This is evidence that Facebook is comfortable sending the traffic away from themselves to a certain extent.
I think it's interesting to think about this in the context of Facebook reaching out and exploring offering services to kids, because perhaps they could build the ecosystem that parents are comfortable with for children to communicate. You know, parents struggle with not wanting their kids to have a phone, but wanting to know where they are and wanting to be able to be in touch with them and wanting to have a secure environment. Maybe this is starting to be a piece of that if Facebook does, in fact, do the kid thing.
Yeah, if they end up doing what Wall Street Journal was reporting, if people didn't hear, they're exploring the idea of allowing children under the age of 13 to join Facebook. So how would this encourage that, do you think?
I just think if a parent could control not just everybody's reactions or interactions on Facebook, but what apps the kids were using, and if they had a communications platform that didn't actually necessarily even have to be a phone. You know, if kids have email and messaging, that's all they really need.
So maybe some kind of Android mashup platform where Facebook is the parental control mechanism.
Yeah.
That's intriguing. Well, we'll keep an eye on the Facebook platform. Thanks, Sarah. There's also time to talk about the WWDC. It's coming up on Monday.
Yeah, that's right. It's actually, finally, we can talk about a few things that aren't actually Apple rumors. And I couldn't help myself earlier this week. You know, we've got videos. Is this the new iPhone 5? All this stuff.
Is this the rumor mill then?
Well, it's sort of it seems like it's not.
It's the
rumor
fact
mill's dead today. It's the fact mill. We're just churning out facts left and right. All right. So the deal is as Tom mentioned earlier in the show, we've seen some banners up at Moscone. That's where WWDC always happens. Banners always go up over the weekend. Went up a little bit early this year that say iOS 6. Now, it doesn't say, of course, in bullet points what iOS 6 will entail, but we know for a fact, although it was pretty much a given, that iOS 6 is going to be the big topic on display.
Frankly, not that surprising, really.
At the conference.
Yeah.
No, not surprising at all. It's just finally, there it is. There it is on the banner. Of course, the question is at this point, what's iOS going to, what is going to be the big part of iOS? 3D mapping, I think, is a given. Certainly, I think updates to Mountain Lion is clearly a given that will integrate into iOS and be explained more clearly. I also think iOS 6 will involve Siri coming to the iPad. Don't know if you all agree with me or not, but I think...
It's a good bet. That's a rumor, though. Now you've finally gotten away from the facts.
Damn, I had like 2 good minutes of facts there before.
Well, what about the Retina? What about the Retina display? That seems to be a fact.
Yeah, so we've started to see a few apps appear in the Apple OS X Mac App Store, not the iOS store, but the Mac App Store that are Retina ready. Now, I guess you could say, well, maybe they're just hoping for the best, but it's pretty much clear that app developers are getting ready for a Retina-enabled MacBook Pro. At this point, it seems that at least one model of the MacBook Pro will be Retina-enabled. I guess we could all hope and dream that the MacBook Airs as well, even an iMac. But we know that the Mac Pro line is getting a refresh based on some delays in shipping dates that we saw earlier in the week if you were to order it right now. So, Tom, I know that you said a few days ago that this is not the kind of conference where Apple refreshes hardware and that sort of thing, but hey, there's a new boss in town, and maybe this is going to be a different WWDC than in years past.
It definitely seems to be shaping up for that we might actually get hardware at WWDC for the first time in a while. Denise, I saw you starting to clap at the MacBook Air.
Yes, I'd love to have a Retina display on the MacBook Air.
Do you think that's necessary? Why do you want that?
I don't know. I love the MacBook Air. I love Retina display. 2 things that go good together.
You're crazy. You're like, MacBook Pro, Retina display, that seems cool. Why would anybody want that on a MacBook Air? I mean,
well, it just seems like overdoing
my MacBook Air is, for all intents and purposes, the exact same computer as a MacBook Pro. It's not as powerful, but I mean, I'm using it for all the same stuff.
Right, it doesn't have the battery, and the Retina display might use up more battery.
That's true. That's true.
Hasn't Apple been known to just like throw out a press release or just update the Apple Store? They go, here's a new Mac Pro, here's some spec bumps. And they go, what we're going to do at WWDC is talk about the software you can run on it. But they don't really make a big deal over oh, look, unless they've redesigned it, which they haven't redesigned the MacBook Pro in a long time. They haven't redesigned the Mac Pro in a while. And the iMac looks pretty much the same for the last, 3 or 4 years. Unless they actually are going to have a new design, that's when it'll show up on like the show floor. Otherwise, we'll just see the same thing we always see. Oh, that little Post-it or whatever the new thing is. Apple Store down. New spec bumps. We get some new resolutions, and that'll come in. As for Apple calling whatever Retina graphics or not, this is one developer. I'm kind of curious. Like, did he just get himself a ton of downloads by just putting this in? All you got to do is write Retina graphics and be like, oh, what does that mean? I'm going to get this app for £8. Is that what this thing is? Yeah, $7.99 in British pounds. So maybe people got excited about it. I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, just because somebody wrote in description, unless Apple's reading every description and ripping out anything that says Retina graphics. I don't know.
You mean somebody's trying to make a few easy bucks because people are confused and ruin their reputation long-term forever?
Somebody's trying to game the system?
Why would people ever try to do that and maybe change the developer name eventually so you never notice them again, right?
You may be right. My theory, though, is if you do have a hardware announcement that is part of WWDC rather than just a coincident hardware refresh that comes out in a press release, it could be because of a Retina display, because that is something developers would want to know about. And you would want to address the developer crowd and say, hey, we're bringing you Retina displays across the OS X platform.
And we got some easy tools for you to upscale your graphics.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that could make sense. Let's move on to Flame, what is turning out to be one of the most sophisticated pieces of malware ever. More evidence coming that this has got to be the effort of a large organization, most likely a state-sponsored organization. We mentioned in the news fuse about the fact that Flame can eliminate itself and then overwrite the data with junk data so that you can't even do forensic examination on it. There's also something called an MD5 chosen prefix collision attack involved in the Flame code. Mark Stevens from the Centrum Wiskunde and Informatica in Amsterdam, pardon my pronunciation, and De Weger of the Technische Universiteit Eindhoven wrote in an email posted to a cryptography discussion group earlier this week that their research on collision attacks seems to parallel what's happening in Flame. Collision attacks are something where two different sources of plain text generate identical cryptographic hashes. And it's been theorized. They actually tried it out in 2008 with a bank of 200 PlayStation 3 consoles. that found collisions in MD5 algorithms and exploited the weaknesses in the way secure socket layer certificates were issued to construct rogue certificate authorities that were trusted. Now, if you have heard Flame was spoofing WindowsUpdate.com, this is the way they were doing it. What happens with a prefix collision attack, if I understand this correctly, is that you create two different documents that have an identical hash value. That's the collision. And that's why you need this big computing power to figure this out. But once you've done that, you can send the first document. Let's say I send the first document to Sarah, who digitally signs it with her certificate and sends it back to me. Now, at that point, I don't know what her actual certificate is, but I have her digital signature. Since I also have the second document that has the same hash value, I can append Sarah's digital signature to the second document, send it to Sarah, claiming it's digitally signed by Sarah, or send it to Iyaz, claiming it's digitally signed by Sarah, and then Iyaz will believe it's from Sarah, even though it's from me. And that's essentially what they were doing with Windows Update. They had figured out a collision attack to be able to get the digital signature from WindowsUpdate.com, but then attach it to a different version of WindowsUpdate.com and send it to infected computers. Flame did not use the published chosen prefix collision attack that was researched in 2008. So that's the thing that impressed Stevens the most, is that they actually did this work on their own. They didn't just copy it from the published work. He says this must have been done by mathematicians doing new science.
So we had what Stuxnet revealed to be a United States initiative, I believe in conjunction with Israel. So this theoretically is bringing credence to that idea that, okay, look, apparently governments are working on this all the time. The question is which one and which newspaper is going to get that scoop saying it was this country that did it. Because the idea that governments are working on sophisticated things like this, especially with the suicide capability of destroying itself and making itself unfindable, like that's pretty impressive. That's like movie stuff. You're like, oh, it was on that computer, but you never found it because I erased it.
Now, some folks in the chat room are pointing out you have to have the man in the middle in order to make that certificate attack work, and that's true. That's an important point not to forget if you really want to understand this. But yeah, this is incredibly sophisticated stuff that we're dealing with Flame, and it just, the more we find out about it, the more impressive it is as just a piece of work. Forget the nefarious aims that it may or may not have had. It's quite an advancement in cryptographic research, apparently. So,
and we know all this about it without CISPA.
Yes, that is correct.
Just to interject.
A little underline
to
that point. All right, let's take a quick break. We got some TV to talk about. We've got Google Monopoly or not to discuss. But want to thank our sponsor, Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to make a high-quality website or blog. Using it today to update the new Sword and Laser video. Want to put it on Squarespace? It's super easy. I can log in from my iPad and do it. In fact, I did that once when we were down at WonderCon, and I wanted to update the announcement on swordandlaser.com. I was able to take that Squarespace app and go in and make a nice-looking announcement. Boom, right there in the middle of a conference floor on conference Wi-Fi, no doubt. So if you want a good-looking website, you want a reliable website, one that's easy to use, gives you great support, this is one of the best times ever to try Squarespace. If you sign up for a new account, especially the annual plans, they give you the best deal. You'll give a free domain name, lowest price, and an additional 10% off. Here's the deal. Squarespace offering free domain name registration to all annual plan customers, completely integrated into the sign-up process. And I'd forgotten this till you were talking about it on TWiT today, Denise, but you get to keep that domain name, even if you just stop using Squarespace. I mean, they definitely believe in data portability. So once you sign up for a domain name, it's yours to keep. It's not like you lose it if you ever wanted to move off of Squarespace. And it's a hassle-free way to get a domain name. Squarespace reduced its prices recently, now offering plans as low as $8 a month. And because you're watching or listening to TNT, you can get an additional 10% off your first purchases on new accounts. That means 10% off the first month if you pay monthly, or 10% off an entire year if you pay for a whole year. For that free trial, though, before you do anything, just go try it. You don't have to give them a credit card. You don't have to give them any information. Sign up for a free account at squarespace.com. Start building your website. Maybe import your old website. They've got great import tools. Then, if you decide to purchase it, use the offer code TNT6, and you'll get that 10% off your first purchase on new accounts. And you can get that domain name if you sign up for the annual plan as well. Squarespace.com. Never been a better time to sign up. And we thank them for their support of Tech News Today and This Week in Law.
Definitely.
Because, I was on that this week. Just check it out. It's a good show. Let's talk about TV.
Sure, let's talk about television. There's a report about Intel's television venture. Now, back in March, there was a report by Bloomberg saying that Intel was considering creating its own online paid television service that works with television sets. Now, today, Reuters had a huge update on this, saying Intel's plans they're meeting a ton of resistance because content providers, well, they don't want to unbundle and license specific networks at a discounted price compared to what cable and satellite pay. So effectively, Intel wanted specific networks and channels at a lower cost than what these companies could get from cable companies. So right there's an immediate problem. If you're curious about what Intel's system is going to be like, there's some really interesting details in this story. If you had an Intel set-top box, it would have facial recognition technology for targeted ads. So Intel claims, and they were talking to executives, they're saying that the new interactive features in its set-top box would add greater value to TV advertising, and that's why we can offset the revenue, because we can give it to us cheaper because we know who's watching and how many people are actually engaged in the ads.
When we say we know who's watching, like we literally know who is watching.
And the executives are obviously not sold on this idea. They're thinking this is an unproven model. There's no way we can do this. Intel was aiming for a November launch, so this was going to come up pretty soon. Intel wants to keep costs down by licensing smaller packages and TV networks instead of replicating your basic cable. You're not talking about getting hundreds of channels. You're getting tiny sections of it. Network owners won't go with it. And the thing is, we have also the satellite providers, right? We have the story going on with Dish where they have the auto hop feature, and the Dish chairman, Charlie Ergen, was talking in the Wall Street Journal. He's saying why they did this auto hop feature is to be competitively necessary compared to cheap online video. And he says that the networks need to develop more meaningful ads, meaning to target your demographic viewers. So theoretically, these kind of go together because Intel would have been able to watch you because this would have been a new model of advertising.
And give exactly the ad that's suited to you.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the thing. That's what you want. You want the viewer to buy what you're selling instead of going, you might be watching this at this particular time because we have all these analytics, but you could actually have, well, you could be watched, I guess. But then again, Dish is still being sued by all the broadcast networks over the whole auto hop feature because that's supposed to be copyright infringement according to the networks.
The point you made, Iyaz, that Intel is facing some pushback from content providers because they're saying, hey, why don't you offer your content to us at a lower rate than you would to, people who are paying for an entire cable package? I mean, really, what is the content provider's incentive here? Because they want at least as much money as they're pulling in now, preferably more, but certainly not less.
Well, theoretically, Intel would be able to give better numbers than anybody like Nielsen could because these are estimates versus actual numbers. And that kind of thing is that's scared off. I know with online video, you have this capability of getting these kind of these interesting
more
numbers.
More detailed numbers.
And it seems like companies are afraid of that sometimes. And I don't know why Intel thinks why Intel thinks they have the right people. Intel actually did get a whole bunch of television insiders that have done all kinds of deals. One of the big names was involved in bringing the Tonight Show back to Jay Leno. These guys have done monstrous deals before, and they're trying to work within the industry standards, but they're just not making headway.
Anytime I see Intel get involved in something that's outside their area of expertise, I don't have a high expectation that it's going to work. I just haven't seen it work often.
I mean, they were burned with Google TV because they were powering some Google TVs for a while, and then Google announced they're moving to ARM with that.
That was just making chips, though, and that's something Intel does well. This is sort of saying, hey, look, we want to help build a whole new industry, and if you think back early 2000s at CES, they're like, we're going to make cameras. We're going to get into the cameras, and we're going to sell like webcams, and they made some really good stuff, but none of it worked.
They are powering a new kind of DVR with Comcast. So maybe what they were going to try to do is go like, well, maybe if you do this, we have a partner. It's hard for them to move out of there, but I mean they make processors.
Comcast called AMD right now. Like, hey, Intel's trying to screw us over here.
What can you do with our partners?
Or Motorola, actually, more likely.
I love that they're throwing something at the wall and seeing if it sticks. I don't necessarily think it will stick because it doesn't really solve the problem that people don't want to view ads. They're targeted or otherwise. That's the point of the Dish Network suit. the ads entirely drop out, and that's a feature I think people can get behind.
I like ads. I just saw one for like suits, and I was like, I haven't had a suit in a long time, and like this is a targeted ad because I don't have the do not track on. I'm like, oh, it tracked me. I want good ads because I buy stuff. Like I like it's not like a weird thing. I don't want to go out to a store and like window shop all day. I would rather have a targeted ad because sometimes I'm just sitting there watching Hulu. I'm like, this is not relevant to me. I'm not going to watch this. And sometimes with YouTube, when they go skip this ad, I won't because it's a trailer for a movie I want to see. So I mean, it's maybe I'm just the oddball case, but like if the advertisement is compelling enough, you're going to want to watch it because sometimes it's one of the most efficient forms of communication. It's 30 seconds and they nailed everything. I don't know. I'm fascinated with it.
Yeah,
I think a lot of this too is. Oh, go ahead, Denise.
Just that I think they have to get the targeting really, really right for that to work. Otherwise, you're always going to be in the situation of that's not relevant to me.
I think anybody, not just Intel, certainly Intel, but anybody who tries to go up against the traditional way that television networks are founded and the fact that they use these ridiculous Nielsen ratings to tell advertisers who's watching what, it doesn't make any sense. Everyone knows it, but they're afraid to break down the model, build up a new one, because I think they're afraid that the numbers will be so different and possibly lower than the kind of stuff that they've been tallying thus far that they will make less money. And it's like just a case of old TV people who have been in TV a long time, not necessarily elderly, burying their heads in the sand and being afraid to innovate.
I don't even think they're burying their heads in the sand, but I think you're exactly right. They're like, look, this model works, and we make lots of money on it. So we're going to hold on to it as long as we possibly can until we can retire, and then you kids can deal with whatever this new crap is that's coming down the pike. But don't do it on my watch, because I know what works on TV. I've been doing this for 40 years.
That's right.
That's what Steve Jobs always used to say, death will eventually take care of the fact that when they launched Apple, people couldn't type. Yeah,
it's true. That a lot of the kinds of change that we resisted throughout history have ended up just evaporating as the population ages, and the people who grew up with it in the new way just accept it, say, no, of course there's color television. You know, that was resisted. Can you believe that was resisted by the television industry? Color television?
No, that's really
So people
amazing.
wait for us to die about 3D TV then.
Yeah.
So can you imagine people didn't like 3D TV? Jeez.
Exactly.
Yeah. They just need to trash the glasses. Then they're in.
Google's under the gun for some regulatory fun here. Joaquin Almunia, Vice President of the European Commission responsible for competition policy, has given Google until July 2nd to clean up their act or get antitrust action. This all has to do with Google favoring search results for this or that. Jeffrey Katz, CEO of Nextag, one of the search engines that has been most pointedly going after Google in these sorts of antitrust investigations, wrote an op-ed piece for the Wall Street Journal complaining that Google stacks the deck against its competitors. He said the most prominent results are displayed because companies paid Google for that privilege. And he also called on Google to disclose clearly and in plain English when advertisers receive better placement in search results and when a result is a Google-owned property. This is interesting. I think what he's – and now Danny Sullivan at Search Engine Land said when Katz accused Google of displaying paid advertisements privileged above regular search that he was talking about the new shopping service that Google's planning on launching, which will have paid placement. I think what Katz is talking about is just your bog standard Google search where you type in something and there's always a paid ad at the very top of the page. Now, it's colored differently and it says sponsored, so I'm not sure what Katz is going on about when he says you need to clearly talk about who is getting better placement because of advertisements. I think that is pretty clear, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Look, did a little search. It says ads related to watches. And on the top right, why these ads? It's in a different colored box. It's pretty clear it's an ad. And then even when there's another ad in the sidebar, it says ads. Why these ads? It's all over the place. So it's quite clear when it's an ad. So I'm thinking maybe confusion with that product search change. And even then, that'll probably be, I believe it's got a label that says sponsored on it too. So I figure it's just, you got a guy who does product price comparisons. This is what his company does. And right now, he's freaking out. What do I do now? Because they also get paid to have certain products in their results, which is a weird thing.
Well, Danny Sullivan pointed out that FTC guidelines created in 2002 say that any search engine should ensure, quote, the use of paid inclusion is clearly and conspicuously explained and disclosed, exactly what Katz is calling for. But then Sullivan points out, Nextag doesn't seem to have anything on their site that explains how people pay for placement, and Nextag's entire business is pay for placement. There are no organic search results there.
Yep. Pot, kettle, same color.
Pointing, you're yellow, I'm yellow,
Yeah.
or whatever.
I'm not terribly concerned about antitrust accusations against Google in this arena right now. Their market share is not high enough. The market forces on them are too strong. And, you know, if they were doing something truly nefarious, I think the market would react.
Katz also has testified to Congress that Nextag gets 65% of their traffic from Google. So even though he's complaining that Google is stacking the deck against his company, they get the majority of their traffic from Google.
I think he's afraid that if the more he gets buried, the less traffic will be coming from Google, and that will negatively affect their bottom line.
It's funny. I used to see Nextag show up all the time in Google results. I used to click it, and I would think I'm being sent to a spam site because when I would go to it, it always seemed like this company gamed the SEO. They got this because when I would do this, I'm like, this site doesn't seem right. There's something wrong with this site. And it turns out there's a reason why I was wary of it, because it's all paid for anyway. So it looks like if they are not a reliable source of information, Google's going to be smart enough to go, yeah, we can't keep that up there because we're going to look bad if we keep pointing to, you guys are great. No, wait, they were running scams over there.
Amit Singhal, Senior Vice President of Engineering at Google, said in a blog post responding to Katz's op-ed piece, "It's understandable that every website believes that it is the best and wants to rank at the top of Google results." Ooh, a little catty there. "The great thing about the openness of the internet is that if users don't find our results relevant and useful, they can easily navigate to Nextag, Amazon, Yelp, Bing, or any other website."
Right.
Is that a fair response?
It is. And just in case it's not, Google has been busy hiring really knowledgeable antitrust lawyers and First Amendment lawyers to brief the Department of Justice in its favor, just to condition them that everything is okay. We're not doing anything wrong.
I don't know, that URL bar seems really daunting. I don't know if I can type in another thing. I can't write Amazon.com on there. It's impossible. There's no way. I don't know how people do it.
Well, the key here is, do they go to another website? Do they type in nextag.com or do they type in bing.com? And that's actually what Bing's trying to do, is get people to use their search engine.
Yeah, perhaps in a move, to combat Google's knowledge graph, Bing announced a partnership with the Encyclopedia Britannica to include Britannica online answers directly in the Bing results page. Now, unlike the knowledge graph, Britannica entries appear as a slightly expanded search result with thumbnails. So you get if you look up something like Michelangelo or something, you'll get information about his life, his death. But if you compare that to the knowledge graph, which is a total different thing on the right side, you get some information. It's drawing from sources from Wikipedia. I believe Google's talking about 500 different sources of sources for them to draw this knowledge graph on. But Bing is saying, look, we're going to put our money with a well-respected company. We're not shutting out other things. Like Wikipedia still shows up first when you look up something like this. And is this enough to differentiate them from Google? Is this them just keeping up? And it just seems like, is anything ever going to make anybody switch off of Google? Is this the kind of thing that you're like, okay, you know what? I can see the result right there. I don't need to click through. Or you go, wait, Bing is actually, they're vetting their sources. They're partnering up with Britannica. I'm not going to necessarily get misinformation, somebody gaming the system, or like Google bombing. We're not going to have that because Microsoft went with Britannica.
I think, and obviously Encyclopedia Britannica is a well-respected brand. You know that if it comes from that the facts are accurate. But I mean, I pretty much feel that way about Wikipedia too. Yeah, Wikipedia can be defaced briefly, but for the most part, the stuff is pretty accurate there for big searches like Michelangelo, for example. I think the question you ask of would I prefer Bing, maybe because it's a little bit more targeted. If I just want some sort of like a small half paragraph about a fact, maybe I would prefer Bing over Google because there's just a little bit less mess involved. No, it's not going to keep me off of Google. I use Google all the time. I would say almost on a daily basis, which is kind of embarrassing because it sounds like I don't know what words mean, but I look up words constantly. I just type in a word into Google. I don't even have to say define : the word anymore, just the word. And the first result will give me the definition of that word. It's like when that stops working for me, then I'll know that Google is screwed, and they're promoting too much of their own social products. But I still feel like within the first or second line of pretty much any random search on Google, I still get what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think Bing has to do stuff like this to differentiate themselves, to catch your eye and go, well, maybe I should try Bing. And they've got Britannica results. Those are good results. I don't think it's enough to change behavior. I haven't seen the thing yet that Bing is going to do that makes me go, oh, I have to use that because no one else has it. It's nice to know that they've got Britannica results pulling up. I'll keep that in mind. And if I'm using Bing, that'll be a great thing that I'll be impressed at. But it's not quite the thing that's going to push me over to switching.
It might not push you over, but it might push someone over who's more conservative about their appreciation of online information, you know, maybe a school or a business who just wants to make sure if we're going to get encyclopedic type information, we want the first thing that hits people's eyeballs to be Britannica.
Yeah.
Might do the trick.
Bing's been chipping away, adding on Facebook. Then Google doesn't have Facebook results anymore. Then Google does something like we're going to buy what is it, ITA or ITC, the company that did all the flight information. Like I was doing that search today, and you could see that they both have so much information. But the thing is, Bing is slowly adding features that Google just can't have because Microsoft has these partnerships that Google just they're just stuck. So it's interesting to see them kind of diverge a bit. I'm tired of them being the same because when I was getting the same results all the time from both, there's no reason to change. Yeah. So
I think that was the point I was trying to make is Bing has to do all these things because they're laying the groundwork so that when they do come up with that big move, then you come over and you say, oh, they also have Britannica. Oh, they also have Facebook. And it does feel different. And I think that's a really good point you made, Denise, that they'll get these little niche audiences that this stuff is important for. All right, let's look at the randomizer. What's in there?
Reach to the bottom.
A correction from CERN. I'm sorry, folks. Neutrinos do not travel faster than light. CERN research director Sergio Bertolucci confirmed that the results that indicated neutrinos were traveling faster than the speed of light were caused by faulty machinery. But Mr. Silver Lining, Bertolucci said the story captured the public imagination, has given people the opportunity to see the scientific method in action. An unexpected result was put up for scrutiny, thoroughly investigated and resolved, in part thanks to collaboration between normally competing experiments. That's how science moves forward.
Does this mean CERN's going to move to that NASA model where, like, we found water this month, or we found alien life, and then be like, if we get debunked within about 3 months, but NASA had those big press conferences, is CERN going to move to this kind of, wait a minute, it worked, people were interested in this?
I think you totally missed the point of what Bertolucci just said. He's like, that's how science works. You say, we think we found this. Then you investigate and you vet it. And you have various people check it and go, yes it is, or no, it isn't.
I was making light of the randomizer. How dare I do that?
I know, right?
I was more pleased with the fact that the laws of physics are still okay. Because I'm like, okay, you broke the laws of physics. Now what doesn't hold true anymore? Because that was a big deal. Am I going to start like shifting phase and I'm going to fall through this chair? I'd like to know if that's going to happen. But if the speed of light is the cosmic speed limit, I'm okay.
You're good for now.
For now.
Yeah.
But if it changes, let me know.
I don't think what CERN discovers would make you fall through your chair.
It'd make me more nervous about it.
It could just blow you up.
Yeah.
That's right. They were going to recreate the Big Bang.
They could create a black hole that sucks us all in.
Exactly.
And it's very unlikely. Very unlikely.
I wouldn't be sucked through the chair. It's just me in the chair.
Yeah. Let's see what's on the calendar, shall we, Sarah?
Let's do it. The Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, aka ICANN, is going to hold a press conference next week, and they're going to unveil who got those generic top-level domains that wanted them. The agency received over 1,900 applications before it closed registration on May 30th. So is Google going to get .lol? One will know very soon. The Samsung Exhilarates Existence is happening. It's coming to AT&T on Sunday, June 10th for $50. Also coming to AT&T on Sunday is the HTC One X. And don't forget, you couldn't possibly forget because I won't let you, but WWDC is happening on Monday. TWiT will be covering it live. Our coverage is going live at 9:30 a.m. Pacific. The event itself starts at about 10. So we'll be commentating. It'll be Tom, myself, Leo, I believe Alex Lindsay, and anybody who jumps into our Google Hangout. It's going to be a lot of fun. So please join us if you can.
Let's finish off with some emails. An incoming message. First one comes from Bill in Jacobstown, New Jersey. Says, hey, TNT crew, I work as a lead developer and on a number of properties that have an on-site login/user account function. All of these sites use the latest best practices for password hashing when they were launched. He's referring to our discussion yesterday about why sites don't properly salt and hash their passwords. He says, you're correct that changing legacy code to new methods would not be terribly expensive from either a developer cost or system resource function. The big problem is the impact to the user base. Since a hash is only a fingerprint of a password and we cannot recover the original password, any change in hashing methods would invalidate all existing passwords. From a business standpoint, that's a huge issue. While many users will respond to on-screen instructions or an email requesting that they change their password, there are many who will simply balk and walk away. In my experience, this has always been the biggest barrier to updating your hashing techniques. That's a fairly good point. What do you guys think? Any other developers out there who have a perspective on this? How do you convince the business to take the risk for the betterment of themselves and their customers when the short-term effect might be losing some users?
All I was thinking was when I was reading these emails, I'm like, what happened while I was gone? Like all these, everybody got hacked like for 3 days. And I'm like, oh, great. Now I have to change all my passwords. Thanks. And
Echo says, this guy is incorrect. If you guys take issue with this and say, no, there's a way to do it without making people redo their passwords, write us an email, tnt@twit.tv.
I think this is also just one of those goodwill things where if you're the kind of company who, sees LinkedIn and Last.fm and eHarmony as like, not only do we not want this to happen to us, but let's go ahead and be proactive and make kind of a big deal to our user base that here's what we're going to do going forward to make sure that you are protected. That company not only looks better, but it forces other companies to follow suit, and everybody is more locked down as far as passwords go going forward. You lead by example is the point.
Lead by example. I mean lead.
Lead or bleed.
Yeah.
That'll happen.
Got another email from Kurt Moreno, the Kung Fu Drafter. Kurt says, in light of all the hacking that's been happening concerning passwords, I'm left with a question. Why don't these services use the Google Authenticator API? I'm assuming there is such an API since I have linked my LastPass account to it. Wouldn't this be a quick and easy way for all of those sites to provide two-part authentication for their users? Maybe I'm just dreaming of a crack-smoking utopia of security bliss. But why aren't there more services offering mobile device-based two-part authentication? I'm assuming my bank takes security measures seriously. But until I have this feature, I will continue to feel as if my Gmail and WoW accounts are more secure and what's in my Tunes bank is safer than what's in mine.
Seriously. I mean, companies like Blizzard and Google and Facebook deal with just as many attacks as banking institutions, and yet banking institutions seem to be slower at updating themselves to these better ways of securing your accounts.
Final email from Vance. Hey guys, following up on my Twitter conversation with Tom and Sarah. In regards to the numbers showing developers still develop for iOS first, 70 to 30%, there are a couple of things to consider. If you are a smaller developer and have to choose one platform simply due to cost and time constraints, then the higher revenue possibility from iOS could be determinative. As someone with a foot in both camps, iPad and Android phones, I can honestly say that there is not a single iOS app that I actually use or want that is not out on Android. My ultimate point is that the app gap, for all practical purposes, is closed, with one exception: high-end gaming. All the major casual games are on both platforms, but I believe that there are some big-name games on iOS not yet on Android. All my gaming is casual, so I would not be able to speak to this. What is actually interesting about those numbers to me is that 30% are actually developing for Android first. Who would have thought that 2 years ago?
Do you think he's right? I'm not sure. Jason Howell, all about Android. You're on the front lines for this. Is Vance got a point here about the app gap being closed? Do you feel like Android gets everything pretty much the same time as iOS?
I feel like I'm seeing that more. Like I said yesterday, I feel like more and more we're kind of seeing a little bit of parity as far as like the big name apps, the apps that really grab, the attention and the headlines and stuff like that. I don't know. I think he's kind of right. Vance is definitely, I know, through Twitter and everything. He's a great guy. He's also a big fan. He's a smart guy. He's also a big fan of the Android platform. I think it really depends on who you ask. You know what I mean? On iOS users are going to be a lot closer to those big name apps. Like, I'm not an iOS user, and I'm not aware of necessarily every, app that everybody that's an iOS user knows and respects and, is like, well, that's an example of something that isn't on Android yet. So it's hard for me to answer. It sounds like he's kind of in both camps, so maybe he knows that a little bit better than I.
You're answering the question to Vance's satisfaction. You're saying, I'm not sitting here thinking I'm missing out on a bunch of apps.
I'm not.
That I'd like
No,
to have.
that
that's
is
what
true.
Vance is saying is, even if there are apps launching on iOS first, they're not the apps that people in the Android universe are crying for.
And I would actually take that a little bit further. So Flipboard, of course, is coming out on Android, and that's right now I think it's only on the S3, though you can get in on the beta. But I mean, there are other apps on Android that are excellent. Pocket, for example, once known as Read It Later, is a fantastic app. And I imagine I've seen Flipboard, and I played with it a little bit earlier today on Leo's Galaxy S3. It's great, but I'm still going to use, the apps that I'm already used to using. So it's not always the type of Instagram effect where Instagram comes over and suddenly all the Instagram wannabes on Android, in quotes, by the way, suddenly go away and disappear because Instagram's, so great or whatever. That's not always the case. Well, I think it remains to be seen. There are plenty of apps on the Android ecosystem that, make Android users kind of feel like they're not being left out.
A 3-word question for you, Jason. Plants versus Zombies?
Fantastic.
On Android or no?
Yes.
Gap is closed.
There we go.
All right, that's it for this show. Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. Don't forget our subreddit, technewstoday.reddit.com, is the place to suggest stories and vote on what stories you'd like us to cover each and every day on the show. Denise, Howell, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you up here in person.
It's so fun to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm sorry we had to make Sarah be on Skype.
We did it.
I don't know why that is.
Next time she'll be
Taking
here.
one for the team, Denise. Taking one for the team. It's hard to be at home drinking a beer in my kitchen.
That's right. We wish that
Ooh,
we
and
could
Avita,
be
nice.
drinking strawberry beer there with you.
So This Week in Law, twit.tv/twill.
Yes.
Every week on Fridays at 11 a.m.
Now
Pacific.
featuring Tom Merritt.
This week featuring
Yes.
Tom Merritt.
This week featuring. Gosh, no, let's not start a rumor.
Yeah. And anything else you want to plug?
No, that's it.
All right, great.
That's my gig.
Check it out, folks. Great show. If you want to know all about the ins and outs of how the law affects your technological life and beyond, Twill is the place. Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening again. You can find us on the web at twit.tv/TNT. You can email us at tnt@twit.tv. And you can give us a call and leave us a voicemail. Our phone number is 260-TNT-SHOW. Nicole Carrico joins us on Monday. We'll see you then.
Oh.